Call this regular city council meeting to order on Monday, May 18th, 2020 at 7:02 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Horn?
Present.
Mr. Bateman?
Present.
Mr. Leith?
Present.
Mr. Welch?
Present.
Mr. Parrott?
Present.
Mr. Downs?
Present.
Mr. Keller?
Present.
Mr. Haneke?
Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have anyone that would like to speak under public participation? Okay, there is nobody on the phone that I can tell, so we will go ahead and go on to the consent agenda. We have under that the payment of bills, approval of minutes May 4th, 2020 regular city council meeting, and the request from Lincoln Community High School to permit the closing of various streets for the homecoming parade on Friday, October 2nd, 2020 from 2:30 p.m. until its conclusion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ms. Horn made the motion. Mr. Keller seconded. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Haneke?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Leith?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Under ordinance and resolution, we have the ordinance authorizing real estate to go out for bid.
Motion to approve. Second.
Mr. Bateman made the motion. Mr. Welch seconded. Mr. Howlett, did you have a comment?
I can comment, yes. This ordinance comes before the council, following up essentially what was done previously. In early April, we had a discussion in regards to a piece of property that is desired to be sold and purchased by another entity. This was on the discussion. It wasn't on the agenda. It was just discussed. I believe there was some indication from the council of a desire for it to go out to bid, but only items that are on the agenda can be voted upon, and the appropriate legal description needs to be affixed in regards to said ordinance. So this is what comes before you now to be voted on, to be put out to bid.
Is there any other comments or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Haneke?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Leith?
Yes.
Sorry for anyone wondering, that was me. Chief was calling in here, and we are getting calls, but I don't think there's anyone else that has called. So just so everyone's on the same page. Moving down to reports, Mr. Conzo.
Thank you, Mayor. You've all got the report in front of you. I won't go in great detail tonight with it. I think it's self-explanatory. The general fund balance, about where we would expect it to be, a little lower than it was last year at this time. There are going to be a few additional bills that don't show up in this, so I'll be issuing a revised report, which will show slightly less in the composite account, the general fund balance in particular, and in the other accounts, because there are still some outstanding bills from the fiscal year 2019-2020, and most of those are in your agenda packet for tonight. Now, I understand there are just a few others as well, so that will change that slightly. If you look at the bottom of the report and the attached, bottom of page 1 and the attached tables, which apply to that section of the report, it looks like nothing's ever happened. Everything looks pretty good. The receipts, the tax receipts, are for the mostly for the month of January 2020, some for February and March. Keep in mind that a lot of this is before this COVID-19 virus hit. So the ones for January, for example, before we knew it was here. So the sales tax revenue was still good for the month of January. The non-home rule sales tax and the municipal share of the state sales tax and use tax The income tax, of course, is based on a lot of income tax filings in 2020 for tax year 2019. But you start to see there, notice the video gaming tax there in particular. That's, was collected in March, $31,640, but it's for wagering that was done in February and remitted in March. So the retailers would have forwarded that to the state of Illinois during the month of March, and during the month of April, they distributed the municipal share to us. You see $31,640. If you look at the attached table, that's the highest we've ever seen for that. Next month, or actually now during the current month, we're going to receive the payment for the taxes that were collected, or the share of the revenue that was collected during the month of March and remitted to the state in April. It's half of that. It's $16,000. Video gaming system was suppressed on March 16th, so it's almost exactly halfway through the month. And the sales indicate just about half, a little better than half of what we took in for the month of March. So the month following that, there'll be zero. And the month after that, they're going to be zero because the system's suppressed throughout the month of April. It's going to remain suppressed at least through the month of April, and if or the month of May, and if the governor gets his way, it'll be probably suppressed for another 5 months. But we'll see how that plays out. But, anyway, that'll be reflected in that. You'll also see a decline in the other sources of revenue, the sales tax, and that state cannabis use tax, $1,354 for February. We just now, it's not reflected in this report, but just today received the tax March month of liability was half of that. It was about $650. Illinois Municipal League estimates that the sales tax revenue will decline by about 30% during the shutdown, and that's a major source of revenue for us. That's an estimate, and I don't think they can really tell with any certainty, but they're expecting the non-home sales tax, municipal sales tax, state use tax, and personal property replacement taxes all to decline by at least 30%. And we'll see. It's going to kind of depend on the duration of this shutdown. One bit of good news, if you look at the second page, the investment totals for the police and fire pension funds, they took a beating in the stock market drop during the month of March. They have recovered somewhat during the month of April. You look at the police pension fund, we were at a month ago, we were at the end of March, we're at $9,007,781. So it's come up about $574,000. Keep in mind, though, we were at over $10 million before this pandemic hit. Fire pension, similar there. It's a smaller fund, but you see it's up to $5,480,291. It was $5,254,745 at the end of March, so it's come up by $230,545. There again, keep in mind we were up over $6 million before all of this hit, so we've got a ways to go. We followed the market today. At last I saw it was up about 800 points. I don't know how it closed. I didn't get to see the end of it, but it was up near the end of the afternoon at about 800. So that's certainly a good sign. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Conzo? Thank you. Mrs. Bateman?
The sewer receipts collected in the month of April was $279,465.88. We did receive money from the Lincoln Correctional in the amount of $26,786.99. And just a reminder, we're still not putting the $5 late fees on. We've continued, we're just going back from the beginning of March, from when this all started. We're not adding that $5 on to the sewer payments, bills rather.
People still need to pay the same way, correct?
Correct.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much. And department head reports either on file or will be shortly. Moving down to new business and communications. First off, letter E is being pulled because that's already been handled. A, we have the approval of CMT invoice in the amount of $11,694.07 for professional services from January 27th, 2018 to April 3rd, 2020 for the Fifth Street Road project.
So moved. Second.
Trace made the motion, Jeff seconded. Kevin?
So, and I'm not criticizing anybody, as it's been suggested. Beth's doing a good job at Fifth Street, trying to get us where we need to be. But, excuse me, if you look at this invoice in your packet, and I just think it's absolutely ridiculous that a company like CMT would hold an invoice from January 27 of 18 to April 3rd of 2020. I don't know how anybody can do business like that. But what's bothering me is there's an invoice in there for $500 to a Monica Patterson. And if you look at her line item, it's the Shealy Group negotiating for their property. So this is one of the many concerns I have with Fifth Street and why I keep being such a thorn in the side of Fifth Street Road, and I could care less whether it gets fixed, to be honest with you. We hired CMT, the city hired CMT years ago to negotiate and do our land acquisitions and stuff like that for Fifth Street Road. I can't find anywhere where this council approved or authorized them to go out and hire a third party to negotiate property for them. So now we have CMT, which we contracted to negotiate property. They hired a third party that we're paying to negotiate property. And now we got the Fifth Street Committee and Mrs. Cavalman negotiating property. I don't understand it. I'm going to continue to vote no on any bills. And I just think we need to stop the bleeding till something gets figured out, or we come up with an actual game plan that makes sense to either stop this project where it's at or move forward. We just keep paying bills that are years old without question. We paid one last voting session, and I think the comment was made, well, it's up for work that's already been done. Well, we got to start questioning these things. We just really do before we start spending money. They're turning in bills that make no sense. So I'll be voting no on this one also.
Further discussion or questions? Ron?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, certainly I am. I don't share Alderman Baton's refusal to continue on the Fifth Street project, because I think it's definitely well worth it, but that's a different discussion. But I would probably sign on to his questioning of this particular, that particular bill, that portion of the bill. What was that amount there? $500, yes. So if someone can speak to that, I'd appreciate it.
I think it's 1,000 total, though, correct? Or am I
Two
reading?
bills.
Yeah, two separate $500. Beth, did you have clarification?
Yes, can you understand? There are two bills. One's for Greenhaven and the other one was for Shealy Group. Greenhaven was right behind the Shealy, for each for $500. And some of these individuals did work for CMT at that time. They don't work there anymore.
This bill that I brought up is Monica Patterson. It's got her address. It's to Amber Knox, so she billed CMT for negotiation work for those properties, and the other bill is the same way. So even if they did work for CMT, they no longer did. So at that point, we shouldn't have paid them for negotiations. They went out and hired a third party on our back, and we hired them to do property acquisitions. If that's the case, let's cut ties with CMT if we're going to negotiate the properties ourselves. Why should we keep paying $11,000 at this instance? It's more thousands of dollars. And I do want to clarify, I think Fifth Street Road needs fixed. I just don't like the way we're going about doing it. I just don't understand why we just keep paying these. And if they're going to come in in intervals of a year, how many more of these bills are we going to keep paying that we say, well, the work was already done? As I've said before, we got to stop somewhere.
Beth?
Yes, Alderman Bateman, I will call her and ask her tomorrow, or email her and ask her what's going on with this, to explain it.
Yeah, so that due date there from that Monica was October 20th of 2018 on her invoice to CMT, and it shows to remit the payment directly to her name, not even a company, which is really kind of unusual. But again, you're talking almost 2 years that she would have billed CMT. So, I mean, that is worth checking into. Tracy and then Beth.
And is this still one of the outstanding parcels? Because if I'm looking at the,
No. No,
The Shealy Group.
Shealy and for the Green Haven.
And I quit researching. I mean, how many times did the previous councils pay? Well, I can't say previous councils because heck, you're going back, 2 previous councils and a mayor ago on an invoice that started January 27th of 2018. But as our mayor pointed out, the first invoice is for October 20th of 2018. And the second invoice is for November 10th of 2018, both for $500. That's a nice round number.
I don't recall that name ever being mentioned previously either.
Yes, that was, we received the deed, well, the deed was recorded on December 14th of 2018. That was for Green Haven, and I'm looking on here for the Shealy Group. Shealy Group was the same day, December 14th, 2018. And if I may say one real quick thing, I do know CMT was stopping some of their work. They couldn't bill us anymore. They were over. So was Hanson Engineers. They were waiting for those 2 documents for us to approve those 2 invoices a while back. And so then that got them started again.
Tracy?
so I'm looking at the Gantt chart that you sent the council this evening, and this falls into the group, as you had alluded to, of completed parcels. But how do we know all of these other ones that are on here aren't going to come back and then send us a similar bill? Because if I had looked at this chart and these are indicated as complete on here, I would have thought that everything was finalized on it.
Right.
So
That's what I'm researching right now, just to be sure. I don't know. This came in on May 4th. I don't know what the delay was. I should have checked that out, but I will ask them tomorrow.
Kevin?
Well, to piggyback on what Mr. Welch is alluding to is by putting together your charts like you've been doing, which I appreciate. Let's just take, for example, the Shealy Group. We put down a dollar amount of what we paid for that parcel. Well, that dollar amount's wrong because now we got to add $500 to it. So how many $500 are we going to keep adding to these parcels as they add up? That's what I'm getting at.
If you look at the invoices too, it says final 25% of payment. So was she charging 4 times that for each project? So you're talking $2,000 per parcel. I mean, so.
Excuse me, I will ask tomorrow. I'll email everyone.
So in that case, does the council want to, approve this until we have further answers? So I would say let's go ahead with a roll call on that. Unless, well, that's what I mean.
I second. Is that correct?
Kathy, did you make the?
I made.
Okay, Tracy made the motion. Jeff seconded.
I'll
Okay.
rescind my second, and hopefully we'll table this. But go ahead.
I'll rescind my original motion.
Then I'll make a motion to table item 9A, the CMT invoice for $11,694.07 until we get more information.
I'll second that.
Okay, Jeff made the motion. Tracy seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Haneke?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Leith?
Yes.
Mrs. Calvin, just to verify, you'll get that answer and then disperse that to the council. Okay.
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you. Moving down to item B, we have the approval of CSO Clarifier tank cleaning. Oh, Kevin.
To go back real quick, Beth, if you're going to contact CMT, the question I would like for you to ask is not clarification on these two invoices. I want to know exactly how much we've paid Monica Patterson, or they've paid Monica Patterson, over the life of this project to negotiate properties on behalf of the city of Lincoln, on behalf of CMT, who's in behalf of the city of Lincoln. Now let's hope it just stops at 3 people.
The subcontract is what you're saying, is a subcontract.
But I don't want to know just these 2 properties. I want to know what we paid her total on the completed parcels.
I think there are other individuals as well. One of them I do know is no longer there. I think it's Lane is her name. So I will ask who all have been working on this project and how much.
How much they've paid outside vendors, outside CMT, for work that we hired them to do.
I mean, I would think they'd be able to, should be able to submit all the invoices like what this individual submitted to them that have been paid to you if you can request that, so.
What did you say? Would you repeat that?
Yeah, the invoice is much like what this Monica Patterson submitted, I would think, and hope that they would have from everyone that they have paid. So if you can request all of those, please. Anything further on that? Okay. Item B then, approval of CSO Clarifier tank cleaning. Kevin?
So approved.
Second.
Kevin made the motion. Tracy seconded. Kevin, you want to?
Christie, you want to explain?
If I may here.
Yeah, came from Andrew.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Andrew's got it. All right, so what we've got going here is the CSO clarifier to the southeast of the plant needs to be cleaned out before we can move forward with the CSO upgrades. This work has to be completed weather permitting, and that's part of our reason for moving on it now. I couldn't give you a completion date just because we cannot do this during rain events. So we will try to work around those to get this completed. We are looking at removing just north of another 1,000 tons of dry grit and sludge from this tank. And this is a historical issue that has not been addressed. Our current spend for cleaning this tank out over the last year amounts to $121,000, and we believe that there is roughly half of the grit left in this tank. It's got to get out before we can move forward with the CSO upgrades, so CMT and the eventual GC can do the tank inspection to complete the upgrades with the tank.
Kevin?
So I've been conversing with Andrew on this. Grit and sludge is a very politically correct way of what he's describing is left in this tank. It's one of the big round circles if you look at the overhead view of the sewer treatment plant. But the good news is that we strongly believe that there is a third vendor, and if Andrew wants to name it, he can, that is responsible for reimbursing us for cleaning this tank. So I know it's money we got to spend up front. We absolutely do have to do it because that is a vital portion of our upgrade, but this may be reimbursable money.
Alderman Bateman is completely correct in his assessment that this has the potential to be billed back to a previous contractor for the city of Lincoln. We are optimistic that will go through.
Ron?
Thank you, Mayor. Just out of curiosity, what happens to this grit and sludge? Where is it deposited or taken or moved to?
Alderman Keller, it is currently going to a landfill. We are utilizing 2 different landfills because of the requirements that are imposed at each one of them on us due to the amount of contaminants that we can bring them and their concentrations.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Parrott?
Andrew, can you tell us why this party would reimburse us? Did they do something inappropriate, incorrect, that didn't follow through on contracts? What was the issue?
They did not follow through on some overtures that they made to the IEPA on tank cleaning.
Any further questions? Yep, sorry,
Just
Steve.
a follow-up. And how do we know all this? And when did we know this?
When did we know that they didn't do this?
Yes.
Well, I found out as soon as I came in, but several people that were before me had started handling this. The removal for this particular grit and sludge started roughly August of last year, right when Veolia took over, and it was something that was going to have to be done no matter who the operator was or who made the mistake for the CSO upgrades. We do have documentation that squarely places blame.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Haneke?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Leith?
Yes.
Approval of agreement for professional services with Farnsworth Group for engineering services for mill and overlay project in the amount of $22,000 and scarification oil and chip in the amount of $20,800.
Move to approve.
Second.
Ron made the motion, Jeff seconded. Mr. Landers?
Yes, this is for the professional services, engineering services for all resurfacing for 2020. The agreement contains some of what they do, the construction document preparation, bidding services and contract administration, construction engineering, material testing, and material documentation. That also includes on-site oversight of the projects also.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Haneke?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Leith?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Approval of preliminary scarification oil and chip targets with additional mill and overlay targets.
Motion to approve. Second.
Tracy made the motion, Sam seconded. Mr. Landers?
As the council requested the last time we discussed the resurfacing, we went through and added targets in each ward. So we've got that prepared. And then the two additional targets for the mill and overlay to go along with the Decatur Street and 4th Street overlay on the sewer repair.
Mr. Keller?
Thank you, Mayor. So, of course, this was, as Walt mentioned, was brought forth to us about a month ago with the Heitman Drive project, which we had asked instead to have Walt go back and look at some more targets to, I think we've used the term spread the love around. And I guess I'm a little bit conflicted on this one because I know that we all hear that fixing our streets is the number one complaint that people have. And I appreciate you, Walt, going through and picking these targets. I guess having looked at Heitman Drive a little bit more recently, it is in really bad shape. And I guess part of me, it's hard to expend $310,000, I think it was, for 600 feet of road when we could look at all of these projects here in front of us and all of the wards and fix them. But on the other hand, our council has often stated many times with many projects that we wish that previous councils wouldn't have delayed a project, because delaying a project 1 year becomes more expensive the next year and the next year and what's going to happen next year and after that. The projects become more expensive if we delay them. And I guess I don't want to be another one of those council members that delays a project towards the next council. So I guess I just open that up for discussion. Again, I appreciate all these because I think citizens will recognize and appreciate all of these targets in front of us more than Heitman. But on the other hand, it is a very trafficked road. I think it was mentioned about a month ago. This is a road which the general public will see quite a bit when they come into our town and gain some appearances by it. So, so I guess I throw that up in the air and see where it lands.
Mr. Kelly, that was one thing that I had said back when we had that discussion. I remember I said that I thought that that road needed to be targeted now as well. You know, at some point you're going to have to displace some people in the, you know, different wards to get this project done, whether it be this year or next year or the following year. But this road is in disrepair. I travel it every single morning, afternoon, and evening on my trips out there, and it's bad. And that is the first thing a lot of people see when they come into town. So, you know, people come into the Holiday Inn, Thornton's just to get gas, Russell Stover, Dunkin' Donuts, all of that. But it's to the point where people have hit potholes out there and gotten flat tires. I mean, it's pretty bad when you first come into Lincoln. It's not a good impression. So I understand what you guys have said last week and wanting to hit targets and wards. I totally understand that. But if you drag this down the road, like Ron said, eventually it's going to come up and you're going to be in the same position then. So I mean, I understand where you're coming from. Kevin?
Well, I agree. But my thought is, now that we know a cost, kind of like when I mentioned the roof of the city hall, we know the cost. Maybe we can take a collective effort and look at funding sources for that. It is a heavily semi-traveled road. Maybe IDOT can help us out, or some other, you know, between now and next year. I know item B under discussion hopefully will free up some money. It's not $600,000 or $300,000, but it's a start. And I just think on projects of that size, it's nice to know the figure and then try to work that into the next budget instead of just being handed it right away out of this one is where I'm at with it. And, you know, I'm the one that said spread the love around. So at least now I got an entire year to prepare on coming up with monies for that.
Mr. Parrott and Mr. Downs?
I agree with Ron. I was in the mindset, I think, when we had this discussion that the longer you push it off, the more it's going to cost. And I think that's with any project, of course. And so it's not to say that the roads that Walt gave us wouldn't go up with cost as well too. But I think the cost for that particular road will go up more than the roads in the wards. And I think, Walt, you've known about this road for a few years now, and I think that you probably targeted this one originally because because it was in the worst shape, and because you had a budget in mind that we could, as a city, afford to do. And so I'm comfortable with replacing that road with our current funds in this fiscal year.
I'll make a comment, Mayor, if I can.
Yep, go ahead.
Something that's come to light after the first round, when I brought this to the council, IDOT has introduced a new program. It's Rebuild Illinois. So we're supposed, each community, or at least our community, is scheduled to receive $159,311.78 twice within the next year. And over the next 3 years, we're going to receive annual payments of that much, up to $955,870.68. So if everything comes to fruition, we should be receiving monies that we can do capital projects with. That money can only be used for reconstruction or construction projects. It can't be put toward maintenance. So if that money does come available like they say it will, They were supposed to start sending checks out May 4th. As to my knowledge, we have not received one yet, but we should be. So that's money that we can use to maybe look at doing some of the work out there on Heitman Drive and maybe some of the other capital projects that we've looked at over the past few years.
Sam and then Kevin.
Yeah, I kind of actually agree with Kevin on this. Now that we know the cost, I'd like to work on that for next year's budget. I do completely agree with the severity of Heitman Drive. I remember my car used to bottom out when I would come out of Russell Stover's there. Like, it's a big deal. But I also feel like we've work on Heitman Drive all the time. I feel like we fixed it twice since I've been on the council. Like, when was the last time, do you know when the last time we worked on that was? I feel like it was recent.
We've did major work as far as spray patching and stuff on it at least twice over the last couple of years. And during the winter, it's constant trying to keep the cold patch in the holes to keep it drivable. But as far as spray patching, we've attacked it at least 2 times over the last few years. And it lasts about 9, 10, 12 months, about a year. So
yeah,
you have to go in and do it again.
I don't like to blow the whole road budget. I mean, I get it that road needs fixed, but some of the other roads in Lincoln do too. A lot of the other roads in Lincoln do too. I still think 4th Street is one of the worst roads in town. I'd like to spread the love.
Kevin and Beth.
So with what Walt has said there, since a lot of our street maintenance, you're looking at this chart, some of it could be determined as maintenance, and that money cannot be used for maintenance. My suggestion is that the council approve Walt's targets for the wards, and we set up a fund, if we have to, the Heitman Drive Fund, and start depositing those checks as they come in there, and allow the state of Illinois to totally fund and pay for Heitman Drive, while we continually budget for streets that the citizens live on and walk on and ride their bicycles on every single day. And it sounds like if the checks come in at the pace that Walt's talking about, we will be being able to pay for Heitman Drive at next year's construction season, or maybe toward the end of this year's construction season, with Illinois money.
Beth.
Right, excuse me. When this first was we first notified by Joe Adams from Farnsworth, I sent an email out to Walt, and I asked possibly we could use some of that for the 5th Street Road project. But I did want to mention real quick, when we were building the Cisco, I came across that with my research, and I should have remembered that. But we were using some of the 5th Street Road money that we had scheduled for that. We put it towards Cisco.
Steve, did you have a comment?
I was just going to ask treasurer if they cut checks like they say they cut checks May 4th. I mean, what's the possibility of getting these checks?
Well, the state has a fairly long reputation for not paying its bills on time. So I would say there's a possibility we're not going to see it on the schedule that they had indicated. And with this shutdown and some of these other things, it may, they could issue a decree tomorrow saying, well, we're going to have to reduce it, or we're going to have to cancel this until, or not cancel it, but postpone it until such time as we have more funds available. And I think what we've seen with the other revenue streams that we get from the state would tend to indicate that's a strong possibility.
And so my thinking is to do the reverse with the budget that we already have, to do Heitman first, and then when the funds come in, work on these roads. Because if the funds don't come in, then this project is still going to go up even further next year. So I'm on the mindset of to do Heitman first, and then to do these when those funds come in.
Tracy and then Kevin.
I think the problem there is that we can't use those funds that are coming in for road resurfacing. That's maintenance. It has to be used towards a project, which Heitman is a project based on the scope of the work. So I do want to kind of reiterate what Alderman Bateman said, and I've been an advocate of spread the love for the last few years because we have roads in every ward that are not in good shape. And while I do believe that our corridors to the community need to be presentable and put our best foot forward, we owe it to the people that pay taxes in this town to fix the roads running in front of their house too. So I also want to throw this in there, not to muddy the waters. We do have, if the numbers are accurate, approximately $400,000 worth of reimbursement coming from Fifth Street Road if those reimbursement requests get submitted. That could go toward Heitman Drive.
Kevin?
Well, the other thing I want to point out is Walt mentioned that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Walt, that Heitman Drive is a total rebuild. It is a total destruction and rebuild that road. So while I agree that the price is going to go up, I don't think it's going to go up significantly because even next year, it's still a total destruction and rebuild. It's not like we were going to patch it this year and then by letting it deteriorate worse, we got to patch it again next year. Walt just said that, if we patch it again, it lasts almost a year. Well, these funds can only be used for major projects like that. So that's why I'm suggesting that we vote for this targets that Walt has said, and we put that money toward Heitman Drive because we already know that is a total destruction and rebuild of that roadway.
Beth and then Steve.
Excuse me, I don't know, that's a good idea. I just don't know, can we move funds that are supposed to be appropriated back from the Fifth Street Road project because we don't have enough funding yet for that? Can we move that to other issues?
My understanding is that we're spending capital improvement money for those parcel acquisitions, correct? So we should be able to put it back into capital improvements, and this could be one of those.
Unless there was some kind of prior.
Now, I would
thing with
ask the
IDOT.
treasurer to weigh in, but
Well,
that's my understanding.
We have paid acquisition of those from, I think, from motor fuel tax for several years. And so those reimbursements coming in must go back and where they, whatever we paid it out of in this case.
And can Heitman be funded using motor fuel tax?
Fuel tax, yeah, I understand. Good. Yeah. Okay. Waltz,
So not to put any pressure on you, Beth, but
all of our resurfacing projects are funded out of the capital projects. If you make it a MFT, if you're going to spend MFT funds for the reconstruction of that road, the price will go up for one thing. And to make it eligible, there's different thresholds that have to be met. So I don't know that paying that out of the MFT fund or paying for reconstruction of Heitman Drive is the right choice. Paying for it out of MFT funds.
so it could be capital improvements or MFT.
yeah, the capital improvement fund is non-home rule sales tax, which is different than the MFT or motor fuel tax. Those are two separate funds. And we've used both of those for different types of projects, but Superintendent Landers has said the threshold is different for what you can do with it.
But it sounds like we have options available to us. Getting the reimbursement, regardless of where we put it, could still be utilized for this Heitman Drive project.
The reimbursement could be. Yeah.
Okay, that's what we're getting at, yeah.
If some of these, though, you're going to have, it's going to depend on what direction you take with this. If this is going to be a complete tear down and rebuild, for lack of a better word, then you're talking about something much different than just improving the surface of it. I think that's what Superintendent.
Right, it's a project, full-blown project. Walt can verify that, though. It's a full-blown,
I'm sorry.
it's a full-blown project, right?
I didn't hear the comment.
This is a full-blown project, Heitman Drive.
Yes, it would be a reconstruction project.
Steve?
Well, the funds coming from the state twice a year, does those have to be spent in that fiscal year, or can they be carried over?
All the funds that we received through that bond fund, the Rebuild Illinois, have to be expended by July 1st of 2025.
Thank you.
Beth,
Well, I think we got our answer.
any other questions? Mr. Conzo?
I would just say, do not spend that money until we actually,
Right.
you know, promises are great. But don't spend it till we actually see that check come through.
In appropriations, can we create a Heitman Drive account
Yes.
and put it in there? So that way, if we spend it, the public's gonna know if we blurt out we're pulling money from Heitman Drive, they can hold us accountable for it. But if we put that money in that account, we should keep it in there for that project.
I guess this is, probably splitting hairs, but I don't know that you need to create a separate bank account for that, but you can create a separate fund or sub-fund for it. That would
Under
be
capital
easy.
improvements, you just
For
create another
capital
line item,
improvements,
right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I can comment again, the funds have to be put into the MFT account.
Oh, that's right, this is
Be
yeah.
accounted for separately.
Right, and the MFT account has several sub-funds in it, so it could be, for example, if there's we used to get grants twice a year that totaled about $66,000 a year, and that has been discontinued, but that was in addition to the usual MFT distribution. Well, we had a separate line to receipt that in too, so it was easy to track where that line came in, where that revenue came in.
I don't think naming it after a certain project is the right thing, because we could use it on different projects. So if you just wanted to, have it Rebuild Illinois Fund, then we can use that on different projects. The issue with using this for the Fifth Street Road project, if we got later into this, the last two distributions, if we do see them, that would maybe something that you could use toward the Fifth Street Road project if we're closer. Because I don't think we want to sit on this money that we don't know exactly when that's going to take place. Then we've got other projects that I could bring forward that we could use this money for.
Steve and Ron.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask, because if it's around 320,000, a year, and we get it for 3 years, that's $960,000, which we have a couple $1 million we're going to have to put into Fifth Street Road, right? And so if the idea is for the last couple of years, kind of, put that money away for Fifth Street, you're going to have to not spend in other areas to make up the remaining money for the rest of the $2 million or whatever it's going to be to finish Fifth Street. So, it's nice that we get this money, maybe if we get it, but we're still going to have to come up with a few $1 million for Fifth Street at some point.
Fifth Street Road's still a big question mark. Heitman Drive's out there in a real project.
Oh, Fifth Street's going to have to be done.
Correct.
Ron.
Some manner.
Ron.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess since I'm the one that opened this discussion, I think we're nearing the end of it. I'll just say that I'm not opposed to these new targets, and I was not aware of this new money that we could possibly get. So I guess I would just say that's let's remind ourselves and let's not forget that Heitman Drive needs to be fixed. So hopefully when these funds come in, let's not forget this conversation.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Haneke?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Leith?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Landers, for putting that together. Moving down to discussion, we have the discussion of the Veolia 3.06% increase for sewer O&M contract. Andrew?
Yes, I'd like to preface this by, I wasn't trying to backdoor the council or anything by sending this letter to Beth and Seth. This is a contractual increase that's built into our contract based off the water sewer trash indexes. and we take a 15-month index and a 3-month index before the contract start date, and you divide those two out and you get our percent increase. What this boils down to is a CPI increase or a consumer price index increase. And it comes out to just shy of 3.06% for this coming fiscal year.
Kevin and Tracy.
Was this built in our budget? No.
No, it was not. Generally, in the past, with the contract we've received by, I think it's the third week in March, whatever the information, whatever the details of what the provider, in this case, Veolia previous, the other they provide that they're by contract. They generally provide that to us by the third week in March, so that we can build it into the budget. But there have been, changeovers and things that happened that, apparently something must have.
I understand that, and I know it's contractual, so I'm going to lean on my good friend Andrew there to make sure he gets with his employer, even though it is our responsibility, I guess, to read our contract. It wouldn't hurt to get a reminder from them at an appropriate time during budget season, because like this year, this was the first budget that the first full year that some of us sat on the council for the budget. So it would have been nice to have a reminder of this money going into budget time.
Well, as I said, the third week in March is generally when we're provided with that information.
I do apologize for the delay in getting it. We built a 1.03% increase into the new O&M within the budget. Unfortunately, the dates that are built into this contractual increase and the way that the equation is written, these numbers are not available until after March based on our contract start date. The Bureau of Labor Statistics just does not get these indices out for us in time. So we have to rough ball a guess based off of the information from the Bureau of Labor that we have available.
Tracy.
Andrew, can you explain the calculation to the council?
Absolutely. The calculation is based off the water sewer trash index, and what we do is take our annual fee from the contract's initiation date and multiply that by the percent change between a 15-month water sewer trash index before the contract start date divided by the 3-month before the contract started date of the water sewer trash index. And that is typically going to give you a rough CPI increase. If the council would be interested, I would be more than willing to pass around the Bureau of Labor Statistics that this is calculated off of.
Yes, that would be appreciated. Thanks.
Further discussion or questions? Oh. Hey.
Is this going on the voting session in 2 weeks, or?
Yes, put this on the
approval of
voting
this?
session.
Yep.
Okay. Andrew, is there anything else on your end?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving down, then we have the discussion of using $40,000 from the sewer O&M enterprise fund for mill and overlay at 4th Street in Decatur, location where previous sewer repair was completed. Tracy.
Thank you, Mayor. So I received a call from our former expert on the sewer, Mr. Fleshman, former Alderman Fleshman, regarding the enterprise fund that is mentioned in the budget. And based on his expertise and knowledge, I was not aware of this, so I thank him for that. I reached out to Andrew and Walt, had conversations about whether we could use that enterprise fund and any monies that were in there to help offset the cost of the work that was done on 4th Street in front of Carroll Catholic. There was a significant amount of money in that account still, after consulting with the treasurer as well. And Andrew did his research And based on his findings, he learned that we are able to claim the $40,000 of expense from the enterprise fund to help offset some of that cost, which then allows Walt to then add more targets, which we've done in the previous vote earlier tonight. So thank you to former Alderman Fleshman for bringing that forward. He isn't even with us anymore, and he's still a vital member of the council. So, and thanks for the treasurer and Walt and Andrew for following up on this. Anytime we can save money, it's a positive.
Kevin?
So just to clarify there, Walt, if you could, for the people watching in the council, this would be, can you explain how many feet before the trench and after? And I think this is more than just, yeah, you've got 4th Street and Decatur Street. So how much extra of 4th Street and Decatur Street is going to be resurfaced to cover the trench repair for that sewer?
So basically what we did is measured the area of the trench on both streets. So just the area where the trench is eligible for those funds. So you cannot resurface the whole street using those funds. So basically we put those numbers together and calculated it, had the engineers calculate the area, and that's where the number fell in as 40,000. Which I think it was 100, I can't remember right off the top of my head what the project amount was. I want to say it was right at 150, wasn't it?
That's what I thought.
You know, so that'll leave us another 40 to be able to spend on other targets.
So place it on the regular agenda.
Okay with that? Anyone have any other questions? Okay, place that on the agenda in 2 weeks. Okay, next up is 5th Street Road Project. Mr. Bateman.
So we discussed this in length at a previous topic up top, but what I would like to do is there's some public out there that is asking to give our city administrator some direction on where to go on the 5th Street Road project. No matter what I say, I'll be criticized about it, but that's fine. The direction I would like to give Mrs. Cavalman is, I personally don't feel we should pay for any more engineering, as I've said previously, until we have acquired the parcels that it would take to do the project. We're constantly engineering different things and paying for engineering of different things, and we don't even have the parcels purchased to do 5th Street. To me, that, as I told one citizen, that's like buying the house and then trying to find a place to put it. So I would like to see if the council wants to vote on it or just give a verbal direction that we just concentrate on parcels needed to move forward with the project and not spend any more money on engineering for the just in case we get the parcels.
Steve.
Well, if you did that, you would never have a project. You'd have to buy the land first before you could engineer it. Pay for the engineering to get the work done. The problem is that we had to have them re-engineer it because we didn't need the property, some of the different properties, or as much of the properties. And so if the idea is we're not going to do a project until we have the land in place, you don't know how much land you need until you give an engineer the directions and the guidance on how much and what you want it all to look like. Now I get your point. Your point is you don't want to spend any more money on this until we absolutely have to, basically. And I agree to that point. And so I don't know that we need any more engineering.
May I speak? Okay. Well, I don't think we need any more engineering. We've taken the bike path out. That did require a redesign. So we've done that, but now we will be saving money in the background, and I don't have that figure for you yet. But could I go down this Gantt chart that I sent everybody real quick and just kind of give you a summarization? Sorry it took so late to get to you, but I had a few little computer problems this morning. I just want to let you know we have made progress. This has been more progress we've made in the last year and a half than we have in many, many years, or decades, I'd say. But there's one property that's listed in blue, and I'm not going to say names or parcel numbers, but there's one parcel that we've already approved, everything's set. But if this system or this project doesn't go through, all that is null and void. So that one's already in. So right now we've already gotten 26, you can see the whites on here, the white color, those are completed parcels. And a couple of them over to the right have a little bit of purple on there. And this was important, I use colors because I can see things better that way. But anyway, those few that have the colors, so, out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 of those, 3 are expired. And those are temporary easement or construction easement that we have to have. And those won't take too long. We just have to, we've already approved those parcels. We just have to go back and renegotiate. And when we did that years ago, it was a 3-year temporary easement. And now we've been using 5 years. But at the time, when it was started, that's what the norm was, I guess, to use the 3-year. So those won't be too much. But then going into the blues are going to be some of our difficult yet. We've got some that are still outstanding. We're dealing with a couple attorneys in some areas. There were 3 parcels. We're moving very well on that that are moving along. 2, I can tell you exactly, have been delayed because of the COVID-19. We had deadlines, our dates to set to go sign. Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly did, and one of them, she was going to go up to by Chicago and meet the son of this one individual that owns a property, and on her own, wasn't charging for that because she was going to be up there for another conference and was just going to drive right on over and do it. So, but that got delayed because of COVID-19, as well as this other group, the trust, coming back. And there is one other property we've been dealing with. All of us know about which one that one is. It's kind of it's got a lot of issues going with it. And that one, they're waiting for some of the trustees to sign off on that. So we're moving along. We really are. And 2 that have green, those are 2 that we were able to just totally forget about because of the, we don't need them anymore because of the bike path that was removed. So.
Beth, is everyone that's still remaining at least in contact?
Yes, we are. There is one that, one group, they were all scattered in Europe, all the trustees. So now they're back, but then COVID-19 hit. So yes, we are in pretty much, I believe, everyone. If we miss somebody or they need us to discuss something with them, but yes, we are in.
How many outstanding are requiring revisions further to their plans that will require additional expenses?
Well, like I said, I think the remaining 6 are the blues. Those are going to give the city the blues, I believe. So, blues.
Sam, did you have a question? No?
So, Beth, this might be a dumb question, but do we have a time estimate of how long this may take to acquire these?
Well, we started about 23 years ago, so we're moving.
Right,
I mean, we are moving along. And
if you had
now,
to guess,
how long it would take
like
to get these done?
a month.
Well, in the last year and a half, we've pretty much acquired. I don't know. I have to go.
And you've done really well acquiring stuff.
No, I'm just saying we have moved, and we have a good team that's working together. Now, I do want to explain sometimes. People don't open up to individuals that come in from, like, out of town or whatever. Sometimes when they approach you about something, it sometimes takes somebody local to go talk to them, and I think that's worked out better with us getting involved. So it is not, we don't have the authority, the city doesn't have the authority according to our contract to go negotiate. It has to be someone from Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly, and we were looking into that about the subcontractor, about that, how much of the auspices of that flows with that. But so we have to have them according to IDOT to be able to receive funding. Any other questions? I do want to thank all the other people. Peggy's helped me a lot. She's had to go down to the dungeon and get things and make copies and all kinds of stuff. So I do appreciate that.
Steve, did you have a comment? No. Did anyone have a comment? Or any other direction they want to offer? Well, Kevin, does that?
Well, I guess my point was there was a lot of weeks that we talked about we're down to 3, we're down to 2, we're down to 3, we're down to 2, and then the state come in and we're at 14. Well, I understand where Beth's coming from on her chart, but the reality is we're still at 12. There's 12 parcels that are colored on her chart that are not done. So anything can happen between now and then. So that's what I'm getting at as a direction of, how, can we set a timeline? Do we need to go another 23 years? Because if you look at the total number of parcels, we've made strides, but we're still 12 parcels away. So that's where I'm kind of at is, how many more of these 1.5-year-old invoices are we going to pay to end up, let's say a year from now, we're still at 10 parcels. So that's what I'm getting at as a direction. And that's coming straight from citizens that are just like, they see us sit up here and talk about it, but, and I try to fill them in as best I can with the questions, but we really don't have a direction here. We sound like we have a direction. We don't have the money to pay for it. We don't even have a revenue stream to pay for it. And unfortunately for me, my wife and I take a drive all the time in the yellow orange pumpkin out there, and we went down 5th Street 2 weeks ago, and I don't think the seat belts were going to hold us into that thing. At one point we need to, spend some money, a Band-Aid, scarefoot that thing, and at least make it halfway drivable for the citizens out there until we figure out what we're doing. It's not fair to them and anybody. To get off topic, that is a thoroughfare into this city. I'm sorry, 5th Street Road is way worse than Heitman Drive. So that's where I'm getting at direction. Do we need to Band-Aid the thing and figure out how we're moving forward? Do we need to just set a direction for Beth of do nothing but working on acquisitions? And at one point, when do we stop and take legal action if that's what we're going to take? We need some kind of direction here.
Yeah.
That was my question, Alderman Bateman. I didn't know if the council had thought any more about, we issued those eminent domain letters. These are the remaining properties. Now, I do know when you're working with negotiations, working with dollars and people's properties and things, there's just so many factors involved, but yet possibly the city council could say, we're going to finish these up, or there's the deadline. But then you get into even further litigation, possibly with going to court over these properties, and that could take a long, long time.
Steve?
So you mentioned eminent domain, and so it was my understanding when the letter went out, the first letter went out, there, it was going to be, that was it. But then we did new engineering on it, right? And then, so then did we send another letter out saying this is going to be it?
Mr. Hoblet?
We sent a letter out in regards, I believe, giving the respective owners 60 days in order to essentially work with the city in the acquisition of those properties. Now, that was a while ago. And when we sent those out, we were, I believe, starting to get some compliance, getting some people come over. We made some movement, and I believe the city was galvanized or encouraged by that movement that perhaps this issue will come to a resolution. But it's been so long since those letters went out that I believe that they've lost their teeth. Because if we were going to file suit, we probably would have done so by now. So if the city is contemplating renewing that, I believe we would have to send out a new letter and actually follow up with it if we're going to proceed with eminent domain. Because if you send out letters and you never move on them, then the people will not take them seriously.
Beth?
Yes, I agree with the city attorney. Thing is, on some of these, when we did not send out, were the ones that we were still working on negotiations. We were still actively working with them. Some were because we had to do a revised plat. One individual's wife and he both owned parcels, and we had to send that off. You know, that takes a while. Then you have to do a title search. Then you have to go back, do another, appraisal, those kind of things if it's been a while. So there's a lot of steps involved in. But yes, if I would say if that's what you want to do, we'll go forward with that. But anything that we're still in negotiations with and we've got a really good rapport with them and we're working on that, I would not send them a letter. But we can just tell them they're coming. But
Tracy?
So as you guys have been talking, I've been reviewing this Gantt chart. So I thought I would just share some of this with those who care. The first one I'm looking at in blue, they're in negotiations with them. So Beth and Ambra are still working on that one. Without saying the name, I'm going to say there's 3 more that are all jointly tied together. I've been on those emails, and I know that we're close to getting those finalized. There is another one that is tied to a parcel with an unrelated issue that Waltz, Beth, the mayor, is aware of, and I believe that one will be accompanied with the other 3. There are 2 parcels on here that they have agreed to either donate to the city or will provide a quitclaim deed, but only when all final parcels are complete. So therefore there's 13 on here, but I can see at least 6 or 7 that we're pretty much there on. Another one, we're waiting on the city attorney to assist with some title work. This other one, it may be one of our more troubling ones. We've made an offer. The individual wants a dollar amount that is far outside of the scope of what we can provide them, even if we wanted to. We're bound by certain guidelines with IDOT on that one. There's one that's in negotiation with updated entrances, and we're waiting on a revised plat for that one. There are 2 on here that have been impacted. They're ready to sign, but they've been impacted by the COVID crisis. And then another one that is dealing with a plat and legal description, and that's it. So in my mind, in reviewing this, I know that we're all growing increasingly frustrated with the delay of this project, but there are activities taking place on most of these. This other one, I think, might be one that we might have to pursue a different approach, as Alderman Parrott is proposing. But I think we need to do an evaluation of these and be realistic on the ones that we feel that we're confident we can wrap up soon and not. If I was looking at this, I would probably say I don't know, Beth, I would probably say we're 3 to 6 months out on most of these. That other one, it's a crapshoot. We're in the process of providing offers and dealing with counter offers. And the information that I'm providing also, it's on this document, but I have sat in on some of those meetings with the city administrator and that committee, and that's where some of that information is based. As far as the other 3 that are bundled together, they're technically owned by the same person, or they're involved in a trust of some sort. So I still think we need to get monthly updates on this project so that we can stay on top of it. And I think that I would ask the city administrator to provide us, based on her conversations with Ambra and Julie, what the realistic possibility is of closing that one that's a holdout. Because in here I see one that would just be a major issue. So I don't know if that helps Alderman Bateman with some of your questions.
I'm just wanting to get some direction on what we're working on some kind of timeline and quit moving the goalpost for the timeline. Let's set a timeline, get it worked out. When we get close to that time, we need to have a serious conversation of what we're going to do next. Either take legal action or whatever. Because to me, and I've had conversations with several of you, we're just spinning around sometimes because, I've been on the council a year now and it's been 14 parcels for a year. Granted, we've got a lot of movement going, as you say, but until that color turns white, anything's a possibility. They could back out at any moment for any reason.
So I would say let's set if we're going to say it's a 3 to 6 month, and that's a guesstimate based on the work that's outstanding. Let's take a stance on September 1st to pursue more aggressive tactics. That's 3 months. And I'm just not just throwing that out as a random number. It's based on the information I provided you guys, and I believe the city administrator shaking her head in agreement with that.
Beth, do you have a comment?
I do, but I probably can't say this because it was dealing with a little bit of money situation, but one individual wants quite a bit times amount what the actual IDOT is recommending.
In other words, they're not wanting to sell.
Well, I don't think it's that they're not willing to sell. I think it's that they have an opinion on what their property is valued at, and the city has another opinion on what that property is valued at based on market, and also working within the confines of IDOT funding this. Because even if, and in some cases, I believe that we have gone above market slightly to close some of these parcels out, but this one is so far out of range that there's no way we could do that. So we have to continue that negotiation and try to reach a settlement amount that is fair to the owner and in the best interest of the community.
Sam?
Hey, I just wanted to throw this out for everybody to be aware of too. I think when people hear us talking about Fifth Street, and Kevin had even mentioned how potholy the road was, people just tend to think of the surface that they drive across, which I get. But also along that whole area, there's massive drainage issues, which we just dealt with this week. Once the Fifth Street Road project is completed, that's going to hopefully substantially, it's going to have a drainage aspect in there that will help with the drainage in that in the area. So I guess I just want people to be aware of that. The city council is aware of it, and we're actively working on correcting it.
Kevin?
One final statement. I think Walt needs to go out there and, let's face it, we're still 2 or 3 years away from doing anything. We need to get a price on what it would cost to at least do something out there where it's absolutely the worst to give these people some relief. We can't go 23 more years of, we're working on it.
So are you saying that you want Walt to work up an estimate in the event that the project does not move forward, but still we provide a road resurfacing of some sort?
No, I'm asking for Walt to give us a estimate on a repair for that road, not scrap Fifth Street Road project. I'm saying we know we're 2, 3, 5 years out of funding this thing and bringing it to completion, and I don't think it's fair to those citizens to go another 2, 3 to 5 years or longer on that road condition. We could scarif it up and chip coat it to give them some kind of relief until we move forward.
Well,
Yes, the worst section of that roadway, which I think everybody is concerned with and talking about, is actually still a county road. And so we would have to work with the county highway department on what kind of type of resurfacing or improvements we would have to do, just so you're aware of that.
Is that part of the intergovernmental agreement section?
Yes. Yep. We have a maintenance agreement on it, so the city's responsible for the maintenance and repair, but it's still county property.
Any further discussion on this? Okay. So Tracy, just to make sure, are you asking for an update at what point?
Provide monthly updates, and then we will shoot for September 1st to have a discussion about more aggressive action.
Okay. Beth, next up then, do you want to go ahead and talk about the IDOT, letter to IDOT for the extension of time?
Yes. We were given a 1.5 year extension last time. I think we asked for 2 years and they gave us a 1.5 years, but that's coming up June 30th. Last time, I thought we'd get more, but we didn't. That was in December of 2018. I had just begun in July. But anyway, we need to know if you will authorize the mayor to go ahead with this, and we'll get the letter done. We'll send you a copy of it ahead of time if you want to look at it. But it requires some information, plus we have to fill out some forms, so I kind of need to have an idea ahead of time.
I mean, if we're talking about revisiting this again, then we're gonna have to propose that. So unless anyone has any objections, we need to get that moving.
Go ahead. Try for 2 years, or we want to try for more, whatever we can get.
I would say 2 years, because if you drag it out longer, then it just gives more time to. So,
Okay.
Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And then Beth, I believe the next topic is you as well. The GPEDC's city's business case management team.
Sure. Okay. This is an exciting topic, and I don't know how much you know about it, but I will try to ask them to come forward and show us once we do it. We're supposed to be rolling out the pilot project. It was supposed to be either today or through Wednesday would get it going. We have 3 businesses in the community, in the city, that want to do this and serve as a pilot. It's a wonderful platform, a database that comes in from all different directions, kind of like a one-stop shopping. And I'm kind of equating this a little bit with how like a chamber of commerce would be when someone comes and says, you have a piece of property where, da-da-da and all that, and you have certain, security levels, but you can pull up that information and say, yes, it's this, they do have docks, they have this, they have that, and it is for sale. It also is for lease for this much per square foot, that kind of thing. But what we're trying to do here is help the small businesses. A lot has happened here in the last couple months, and they've taken a nosedive on a lot of things. And so this is helping any of the businesses in the community that qualify for these grants. And it also brings up when the individual owner of the business inputs information about their business into this secure database. And this database has been developed by people out of Peoria. They're doing it for the whole state of Illinois for free. They want to help our state and our community. Anyway, they put the information input the information in about themselves and things like that, what they're interested, what grants they've already applied for, maybe what they've received or something like that. Anyway, the system, not knowing who it is, they're just assigned a number, will randomly go through all of that and come up with what grants possibly they qualify for and help them, and then they'll pass that information back to me, and I will go tell them, you are qualified for this, this, and this, and let's see what we can do to get started on it. We've already, like last month, of the small business downstate stabilization, were allowed some help for 15 individuals in the city, so that was a really good thing. So they're going to do another round, they believe, plus there's some for agricultural businesses to be up to $50,000 grant per business.
So if anyone is interested, they can reach out to you.
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you want to give them your contact?
Sure. Yes, my number is 217-732-2122, and leave a voice message, and I'll get back with you.
And your email address?
My email is Elizabeth Cabelman, or eCabelman at Lincoln, Illinois, lincolnill.gov. eCabelman at lincolnill.gov.
Okay.
Isn't that it? I think
Yeah.
so.
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Discussion regarding the sale of or the city's continued use of city's North Kickapoo Street property. Kevin?
I brought this up last meeting, and I thought it was discussed that the property needs to be tore down and we're gonna make a parking lot out of it, so if that's the way the council feels, I'm okay with that. I was just thinking that if it could be purchased as is and put back on the tax roll, it'd be a good thing, but it sounded like, between Wes and others that, didn't think that was a good idea, so I'm stepping back from that suggestion.
Beth?
Well, I have been in contact with the broker who's asked about this on behalf of his client, and he was asking about all of this, and I told him it was too detailed, too much unknown by the city having to put too much responsibility into this, that they were going to sell it as is. And so he said that was probably a good idea. He was going to go back to his client. He said, be patient, but he was going to go talk to them about this. So I don't know if you're still interested in this or not.
Anyone have any input or suggestions?
Well, if we can put it back on the tax roll, that's a good thing, but it sounds like this is a pretty vague offer, so it's not like the wrecking ball is going to tear it down tomorrow. So if we get more information, we can entertain it, but I think we need a lot more information before we make any kind of decision on it, and just set it for a timeline for demolition, and whichever one comes first, that's where we're at.
Steve?
Yeah, it's kind of like Heitman, it's one of the first things you see to the downtown when you come in, that area over there. And depending on who's going to do what, with that particular area, could be a little concerning, because there is some businesses on Kickapoo that's a little unsightly, coming into the downtown area, off of Kickapoo. Yeah, I think we need to be kind of cautious.
I agree with you.
Again, it depends on what their plans are. I mean, if the guy comes in and he's going to put a salvage yard in there, then obviously we're going to vote no. If he's going to refurbish the building and make something of it, I mean, we can't deny someone grandeur plans. If we have to take them at their word, or I don't know if we can hold them to it or whatever, but at least hear the person out. I think between the 8 of us here, we could determine whether the person's making a real offer, or just blowing smoke, and we just determine it from there.
Mr. Conzo?
Thank you, Mayor. Keep in mind, you're talking about turning it into a parking lot. A parking lot isn't something that you can build for little money. A parking lot's an expensive thing to build. And once it's done, it's practically worthless because it doesn't generate any property tax revenue. It's a nice way of saying, well, we don't have anything else to do with this vacant lot, so we're going to turn it into a parking lot. And it's doesn't really add any value to the city, especially where that would be, which should be some distance from where the remaining downtown businesses are.
And I think if you look at the parking around the park, I can't tell you last time I've seen it full.
Yes.
So, Mr. Barrett?
Well, we haven't done anything with the lot next to the library. And that would probably be a first one to do around the area if we were to do anything.
And what we ran into with that is a lot of cost associated with that too. It would be I think a smaller lot if corrected.
Smaller lot, but you got the alley there that they wanted to kind of really look at, and the sewer issues that are going down through, there as well. So that was going to be a $750,000 project, I think.
Yeah, it was huge.
Well, while we're on this topic real quickly, for further discussion down the road, I don't think we've done it since I've been on the council, but, there's times that there's dilapidated homes and other properties that we pay to tear down. I personally, I'm one of them DIYers. You know, we've all seen those shows where they sell properties, and Seth probably knows of them. We talked about one earlier tonight that sell for next to nothing, and at least the people fix them up and keep them on the tax roll. So I think, obviously, if Wes come forward with a dilapidated home that needs to be tore down before the city spends several $1,000s to tear it down, put it up for sale. If we get, you know, I don't care if we get $100 for it, then that person has to start paying property taxes. And anybody who's been in real estate and you buy some pieces of property, what the previous person was paying in real estate taxes and what the new person is going to pay in real estate taxes is sometimes $1,300 difference. So, and it keeps it on the tax roll. And maybe we put, you know, if it stays dilapidated for a year, then we start fining them just like we did the previous owner. So, you know, there's people out there that are willing to buy older properties and flip them, turn them around, fix them up. And if they can get them on a dime, that gives them more money to spend in it. I think that's a better way of solving our issues in this town than tearing them down, filling the hole, and then Waltz crew's got to mow the lot. That's the way I feel about that. And I guess that's where my whole discussion was about the Kickapoo Street property was, if someone come forward and they were going to put in some kind of antique mall or whatever and paint the building and fix the garage door, I understand it's still a thoroughfare into town, but that would look better than the purple building that's sitting there now with the big hole in the garage door. So that's where I'm at on those things, you know, and that's just where I stand on those kind of issues.
Any further discussion on this then, or were we leaving this? Okay. All right, Beth, keep us updated on that. Another topic that's not on here, but I was going to bring up, and Walt and Sam and Colby can probably talk about this, but the Westminster drainage issue was obviously a very hot topic the past couple days. I've had a lot of people reach out to me. It was also on social media from homeowners out there. So could any of you explain what's going on out there and what the city, how they have directed them, I guess, because that's a question that I've been facing a lot in the past couple days. I say, Walt, do you want to talk about it?
I can. Basically what happens is the farm ground next to, on the west end of that property, when we get heavy rains, the water drains off of that property and runs through several of the homes' backyards and then comes out onto the street between two homes. And when we get heavy rains like we had Sunday afternoon, it basically overfills the whole system. That water drains into the street, and then it drains into the catch basins along Canterbury and Westminster Drive. But when the ditch is full along West or along Fifth Street, actually on Sunday I was out there, the outlets for that drainage into the ditch along Fifth Street were underwater. So there's no room for that water to drain away. And when that happens, it floods the street. It's not a good situation, and I know that the residents are frustrated. At this point, the infrastructure that's there, as far as what's on city property, it drains. It just takes time when it gets overindulged with water. There's no easy fix. I just don't know. Because basically the water's running off of private property and coming through their yards and then out onto the city street. And without, there's things in the Fifth Street project that are possibly going to help that issue. But as far as a short-term fix, I don't know what that would be. I know it's not what people want to hear, but it's unfortunate that I'm not sure that there's anything we can do at this point until we can move forward with that Fifth Street project.
So where the majority of the water is actually coming from is from a privately owned adjacent property?
Yes.
So again, just to reiterate, there's really nothing that the city can do about that in particular topic.
Unless, until we can acquire that property, and part of the drainage plan of the Fifth Street Road, will alleviate that to a certain point.
So that's why I bring this up. Is that something worth looking into? Because this is Ron, did you have a question on
Well, I
that?
was just gonna. I'm unaware. I knew what happened, but I was not aware of what actually caused it till now. So I just some follow-up questions. So how often does this happen?
When you get big rain.
Huh? I'm sorry.
I think one of the homeowners out there had it on Facebook. It was twice in 20 years or 10 years, something like that.
This happened last year too.
And when
During
you
that
get when
big
you
April
get
rain.
heavy rain.
It's a flash flood. It's a flash flood. So I mean,
By far was the worst.
Is the just for another follow-up question? Is the property owner aware? And I'm sure he's aware. But is there a possibility that he can do some drainage in an alternate location? To I don't know. I'm not aware of the situation.
it's farmland.
Right.
It's running
But
right
you
off
can
the
still-
cornfield. If out where city clerk and I live, the farm tiles were overflowed out there. We had pictures of one of our relatives. It was actually gushing up out of the field. My pond was well over full. I feel for those people, but it's called a flash flood, and it was just running off. We had so much rain in such short amount of time, and my wife and I drove out there 6 o'clock or so, and the water had gone down. They were hosing down their driveway. So that doesn't make their situation any better. I feel for them. I've been in that position before. But as Walt said, even if we were doing Fifth Street right now, those engineering designs are based on records of flooding, rains, and water based over years of tracking, and you never know what Mother Nature is going to throw at you. So I do know that part of that drainage is included in the Fifth Street Road from that farmland. It's been discussed thoroughly at the county meetings that I was at and city meetings from that farmland. The engineering firm has addressed it as best they can, but hopefully it will help a lot of the issues. But like Walt said, a short-term fix. That was just several inches of rain in a short amount of time. It came up and went down almost as fast.
Beth, did you have a comment? Okay.
I just referred to something that is ongoing.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of it because it has kind of circulated, so I didn't know if there was any other. Does anyone have any other questions on that?
I like to make
Yep.
more comments.
Sure.
The only thing we do at this point is try to just make sure that the basins are clean if we can. And the neighborhood really does a great job of that themselves, because they know that what's gonna happen when we get with heavy rain. So they do a really great job out there keeping their street clean and keeping the basins cleaned off. And, they were out there actively working, trying to keep the stuff clean, keep everything flowing. But once that water just doesn't have any place to go because everything's so full, and that's when the issue starts. But basically, Canterbury was like a lake.
Mm-hmm.
It was, you have a 6-inch curb there, and it was up over the curb into the yard. So, and that was the whole street of Canterbury. So it was all underwater.
And I know there's so much. Some of them were getting water in their basements too, so that's why I had mentioned it.
That big concrete ditch out by the sewer treatment plant on South Kickapoo Street, it was the raging river Sunday evening. We drove by there just to see if it was holding all the water, and it was flowing pretty heavy out there. And the people were at work at the plant. I'm sure Andrew can attest they were trying to keep up as best they can with water runoff on a flash flood.
Okay, Ron, you had some announcements or?
Yeah. We are, of course, several months into the COVID pandemic, and several months also into the shelter-in-place orders from the governor. And we've heard a lot from the community, especially the businesses, about the strife that they're facing. And I think we all feel their pain. I think we've all gotten calls from business owners and some concerned residents about what this means. I think they're looking for answers. And we've been in conversations. I know this came up a couple weeks ago, and the mayor appointed Alderman Welch and myself and to examine some options, what we had. We talked with our city attorney, John Hoblet, just to see what our options are and what liabilities we would have. The mayor, of course, released the letter to the community authorizing businesses to be aware that there also could be some certification or licensing which is pulled, or insurance which is pulled if they're not careful in how they open. But all that to say that just to the public, we're still considering our options. I think as a council, we I'm just going to say this on my own. I think that we just can't sit back and let this continue. I'll just keep that there. So we met this morning, myself, Alderman Welch, City Attorney John Hoblet, with Don Cavey, who's the Logan County Health Department Director, Sheriff Mark Landers, Emily Davenport, the Logan County Chairman, and Brad Hauge, the state's attorney. The city administrator and mayor were unable to attend, but they've provided a lot of input, of course, just to consider our options. And just so the public knows, several things we're doing. We're going to begin talking with some of the business owners in the community just to hear their concerns and their wishes. We know what some of the concerns are, but I think we need to be well aware and hear them out just to see what they want. Just so we can take a more proactive approach in what we need to do. So we need to be more mindful of what they want. So that'll be happening soon. And as well, we've tasked Emily Davenport, who's again the Logan County chairperson, to contact other counties who are in our region. We are in Region 3. And so it makes sense to work with some of these other counties as a cohort to have a more unified response plan. And our unified response plan does need to involve both the city and the county. I think this was brought up a couple weeks ago, and it was very wise. So we're also taking a multi-county approach, which has been advised by several people that we do that. So we're looking in to see what that may look like. I'll just say that the Logan County Health Department has done a good job, along with our Emergency Operations Center and EMA, to really get our response going. I'm very impressed. State's Attorney Brad Hauge today mentioned, I've heard this mentioned several times, that other counties around us are very impressed with Logan County's organization, our ability if a serious outbreak would happen to occur. We have put all the pieces in place, and so other counties are actually asking us how to do that. So I am confident that we have the ability, if there would be a serious outbreak in our county, for us to handle it. I think the metrics and the data there are there to back us up that Logan County's infection rate is very low. We've had, what's the last count, 608 people have been tested, only 10 positive. That's a response or a positivity rate of only 2%. So I think it makes sense for us to begin to see what we can do to go a little ahead of the governor, if I can be safe to say it that way. So that's something else I was going to say. But anyway, so we're going to continue meeting as necessary and see what we need to do. I think there's other things we could do. I think the city park should be reopened under the current plan. It says the decision to open or close community parks remains under a local authority. I've talked with Don Cavey about this, and even though he says there's certainly always a chance for an infection of coronavirus to last a couple hours on playground equipment, my recommendation would be at least we give some people something, and just to let people know that we as a city are believe that a reopening can occur very incrementally and a very phased approach. So I would say that our city parks, my recommendation, could be reopened, as long as we, of course, encourage that there's be social distancing, which is practiced in those areas. So that's what I got.
Barrett?
Yeah, I think a majority of us have received phone calls from business and industries, from concerned citizens, even from church leaders across the city. And I don't want to leave out the churches and the places of worship here in the city of Lincoln, because they are probably some of the backbone of the community. especially during times like this. And they can practice safe distancings in their facilities, at least probably a majority of them. The Logan County Health Department are going to take the directive from the state, Ron, and maybe you can address that, because they're not going to say otherwise from what the state is going to say. And so they're not going to promote and encourage openings of businesses or churches across the city. And so I'm a little hesitant to really put much faith in them on opening the city, as much as it is going to be the individuals and the business owners to take it upon themselves to do it.
If I could follow up to Alderman Parrott's comments, first of all, you're absolutely correct. I think there's a lot of concern from churches, and for due concern. I mean, I think that it seems to be insinuated that if the phased-in approach that the governor has in plan for churches to reopen that have a capacity of over 100, that could be phase 5, and that could be later this year. So I think there's a certain valid concern there. You are right. Don Cavey has taken a very neutral approach. He certainly has to look at the data. It's his job. He has to work with the Illinois Department of Public Health, and that's the only thing he can do. We recognize that. We appreciate that. Actually, wouldn't want him to do anything different. But he also understands we're policymakers, so he's here to advise. But I will also say that I think our response has to be, and it is, and will continue to be, very data and health driven. I think we have a need here to ensure that the public safety is of our highest priority, along with the economic output of our community and economic productivity. So this is why we keep going back to the health statistics, and we're using the metrics that the governor has put in place to say this is where your next phase should be, and we're there. We're in the next phase already. So you're right. So we look to him, and he looks to us, but we're going to continue to seek his guidance, as well as because he's continually watching also at how these counties around us. If we do form a coalition with these other counties, he's also monitoring what the overall benchmark is as well for all of them.
Does anyone have any opinion on the parks?
Open them up.
When are we talking about making these changes?
The parks?
Well, the parks could happen at our
Really?
discretion. Again, this has been advised from the IML that the plan allows communities to open it at their own local authority. So we have that discretion to do so.
Okay. I guess you talked about opening in increments. I guess just for my own clarification, where are we at with the state's current plan? We're scheduled to hit the next phase of that plan in 2 weeks, correct?
Possibly.
Fully anticipate that that'll be pushed again. We fully anticipate that that'll be pushed again.
With the new threats and other things that keep coming out daily, we'd be hard pressed.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Things do keep changing on a rapid rate. But I was under the impression that we were going to hit the next phase of reopening in June 1st. I'd like to, if we're going to make any changes, I'd like to make it in very small increments. If you want to open up the parks, sure. But then I don't want to open up anything else until the next phase. I think that I work in healthcare. I think we still need to be really cautious. I get that we have very low numbers, but it's still a dangerous issue.
Well, and yeah, at the end of the day, as we've said a couple of times, we don't really have the authority to tell people to go ahead and open, because if they open tomorrow and the state comes in, then then who's responsible for that? So that's why we've made it very clear, and I think Ron kind of extended, basically that we're not saying, hey, everybody open tomorrow, because we know the potential repercussions. So we are having to follow the governor's order, but again, at this point, it may very well get pushed past June 1st. So I think what Ron's saying is we need to give our people something to do and look forward to, especially these kids who, number one, don't have school, can't go to pools this summer, and can't do anything. Carnivals are being canceled and everything else. So
Yes, you're correct. And by the way, the letter that you sent out was very well put.
Well, We'll thank Mr. Hoblet for that.
Thank you, Mr. Hoblet. But yeah, okay, I guess I just wanted to say my piece about that.
Kevin and Tracy.
So are we authorizing Walt to open the parks at his departments if
That
they
would be
have
my
time?
recommendation.
Well, we can't vote on it because it wasn't on the agenda. So the mayor would have to make that decision on behalf of the city.
Right, which we never voted to close them in the first place, so I think you're right, that would be the mayor's discretion.
Does anyone have major reservations with this? Mr. Kondo?
I don't have any major reservations with it, but I guess what needs to be clear is which parks are we talking about?
That's what I say. We need to specify exactly. Walt, can you specify which ones, if we were to tell you tomorrow to open the parks, what you would be opening?
Okay, so you're talking about opening the playgrounds.
Correct.
City parks.
Okay, so it would be Postville Park, Great White Park,
The fitness court.
the fitness court,
Lynn and Fink.
Melrose Park, and Allison Park.
Allison Mayfair.
So are we also opening up the fitness court up on
That
8th
was one of the
Street?
ones he mentioned. Yeah.
We would not be opening Lennon Fink Park or Elk.
Memorial Park.
Well,
So-
Memorial and Scully would be up to the county, and I personally feel that they would follow our suit. But I just want everybody to know that Lennon Fink Park and out by the Elks, Memorial Park, that's a park district. Those are park district parks.
Ron, I was going to say, if everyone is agreeable to this and we do open it, would you be able to reach out to Don and Ryan? Because last time they had sent the information to the others that we were doing, and that's when the schools closed theirs and everyone else. I mean, maybe if they want to follow suit, that way they could open up.
Sure.
As well.
Sure.
Chuck, did you have your?
Just clarification on what Alderman Bateman said. Latham Park and Scully Park are county parks, not Memorial Park. Memorial Park, I think, as you later said, is Park
Memorial is
District.
Lincoln Park District.
Park District, as it, yes.
Lennon Fink Park is Lincoln Park District.
Scully and both
and Latham are both county.
county park.
And then this does not include any school playgrounds, but Ron was going to reach out to the school superintendent.
So I think we can publish that list to the city Facebook page and possibly the website so that people have a definitive source to reference.
If the mayor is gonna publish something like that, or Alderman Welch, to the city website, please let's reiterate that if the equipment is still covered, don't tear the covering down. If Walt's crew goes by and uncovers it, or the schools uncover, only the playground equipment that has had their restraints removed is what they should be playing on.
Okay, one more time, Walt. Will you run through that list real quick?
Postville Park,
Correct.
Great White Park, Melrose Park, Allison Park, and the fitness court.
Okay. So does anyone have any objections?
So we're sure that we're not going to be liable for any. The IML said that we're okay to do this.
Mr. Keller, do you have anything else on that?
No, this is direction again that we've received. We have the local authority to do so.
Yeah, and I think even before we made our own, we weren't technically being forced to put the tape up.
Right.
I mean, we made the decision to, or I guess I should say I notified Walt to, tape ours, and then the health department encouraged the rest to follow suit. So, okay, Ron?
Well, I was just going to end up saying if there's anything else that anybody else is on this committee, or Mr. Hoplet, Mr. Welch, Ms. Calvin, or the mayor, if there's anything else that from our explorations into this topic that I've forgotten. Anything anyone add?
No, I would just say that you did a very good job of summarizing approximately 2-hour meeting that we had today. It was actually a very good meeting. The sheriff was there, gave us a lot of input, and I think we're taking the necessary steps. But in the same breath, and I think I'll just take this opportunity to commend the mayor for publishing that letter on Friday, because from what I've heard in the community, people thought we were doing nothing and having no conversations about this topic, when in reality, we have been talking about this for weeks. Our hands are just tied because we want to be safe. We want our decisions to be well-informed decisions that drive the community forward. And there's many scenarios that we have to consider, even some that came up today that we hadn't even thought about, and specifically with businesses and their choice to open. And we certainly don't want to see a business who's already struggling have a state agency come in and shut them down. And as a matter of fact, businesses in this community have made attempts to open in some respects and receive cease and desist letters from state agencies already. So they are watching. Initially, it's a hand slap, but the way that the governor is making it sound, they're going to start getting very serious about this. And should you lose your license or incur fines, we have no guarantee that you'll even be able to get that license back to operate when things get back to normal, if and when. So I know we're in that position. The health department is in that position. We run the risk of losing funding that we normally receive from the state. The health department does. And should we go out on a limb and we lose that funding, that starts to impact other things. Now roads aren't getting repaired, curbs and gutters, projects stop. Worst case, people end up being laid off. It's just a domino effect. So I just want to let you know that we are working with our partners at the county and the health department to make the best decision for the community and do it in a safe and responsible manner.
Mr. Howlett, do you have any reservations with the parks?
In regards to the parks, as an attorney, I always tell people to avoid liability, and that would be the situation here as well. I would think that given our numbers, the risk associated is low, but there's a situation. And like I said, I don't want to see something traced back to a park being opened and someone getting hurt or sick or something of that nature. Issues of proof regardless. So I heard some numbers today that were quite low. So you do not need my permission to open up these parks, but I, of course, counsel in regards to avoiding liability. Having said that, there was also something, now that you've given me the opportunity to speak, there was, at some point in time in the past, I proffered to this council that we should suspend committees of the wholes for a time being. Now, coming up in June, courts are going to start opening up in limited capacity, but they're going to start opening up because the backlogs are so enormous and things need to be keep moving. They're taking appropriate steps to limit their liability, limit social, or do the appropriate social distancing, and limit the amount of people, the amount of cases they will be hearing, and to do Zoom meetings as much as possible, or some other service they provide. If the council is so desirous to see a return to things of normal, maybe it'd be a sign of solidarity that with these low numbers that we do have, and since we are operating and social distancing ourselves, that perhaps at some juncture in the future, we should reinstate the committees as a whole. Just something for you guys to consider. If like I said, it might go a way to show to the community that you guys are looking to have things return to normal as well.
Is there any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. I say let's go. Let's do it.
Okay.
Could I have that then, the discretion to put that via ordinance or resolution for the next voting meeting?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. One more thing to this too. The we were informed today at today's meeting that we do have testing, of course, for the COVID, and the county is increasing the number of tests they're administering at congregates, group quarters, nursing homes. So, which is a good sign that they're wanting to definitely nip this in the bud in the areas where it is traditionally the highest. So, if there is a slight increase, which may happen because now some of these people who may have COVID and they didn't know it are being tested, I think that's where this increase would be. But I don't expect it to be very high. But it's good news to know that they're going to be tested there.
Steve?
Is that new, Ron? Because I know people quite intimately that had to get tested, but could not get tested in Logan County and had to go to McLean.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Because I've heard exactly that.
When
I've
you
heard
said
in Logan County we have the means to do it, but you know, it was not the case, you know, for this situation.
I can't answer that specifically. I don't know.
Okay, so last time I'll ask, everyone's okay with the parks?
Yes.
Walt, go ahead and open the city parks tomorrow morning if you would, or have your staff do that.
It will take care of, we'll sanitize them one time over when we go through to open them.
Okay. Thank you. And then,
Did have one announcement.
yep, go ahead.
Yep. The landscape waste facility will be open Wednesday through Sunday this week. Beginning next week, it'll go back to its Wednesday, Saturday operation. Beginning next week, it'll go back to normal schedule.
Got it. Okay, and then Tracy?
Go ahead if you got a last.
go ahead.
Okay. So, and I'm going to kind of drop the mic here and then we'll close this out. But in the meeting today, Alderman Keller and I had a conversation following that, and I think it is extremely obvious that we are ill prepared to provide proper guidance for our businesses. We're doing it, but we're doing it on a piecemeal basis based on information that we're learning and disseminating. We have the city administrator who is engaged with GPEDC, and we do have the LEADS program out there, but we do not have an organization right now that a business could go to and get the answers they need. So, I'm not making a request that we open up a Chamber of Commerce because I don't want people to lose their minds over this. However, I am, I suppose, asking the mayor and this council if we can put some individuals together as sort of a task force or a committee to look into what it would take to start to rebuild our economic programs in this community. Because we do not have the resources available. And that's just during this pandemic. Moving forward, and we've known this, anybody who's listening or watching knows that we've been struggling without the Chamber of Commerce for a while, which is why the LEADS program actually got spun up. And I think it's about time that we realize that we can't continue to operate without such an organization. We've got to get serious about this.
So if I missed it, I'm sorry, but what exactly happened with that initiative?
With what initiative?
The one you just mentioned.
With LEADS?
Yeah.
My understanding is that they're still working on hiring an executive director, and they are doing some work in the background, but I have not been engaged with that group. So,
Because it was about a year ago we went to that meeting, and I haven't heard anything since.
I know that they're still having conversations, but I don't think they're operational at this point.
I can find out and get back to you if you want.
Right. Beth, did you know anything?
No, I mean, you and I were invited a year and a half ago to that
Right.
meeting when we first
Say it's
heard
been
about
a
it, and then-
while.
Yeah,
so-
it's been, then the whole council got invited to the nice dinner, but yeah.
Right. Okay. You want to check into? Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, just real quick, tourism may be coming forward, you know, with a request here in a meeting coming up shortly in regards to the potential of accessing some funds to help improve and prepare the mill for the Route 66 celebration. There's some just some things that really need to be done to the building they're getting some quotes. We're looking maybe around $15,000 in order to upgrade and make some improvements, get rid of some of the plywood or boarding on some of the outside of it and those types of things. And so the council just kind of start thinking about that, and maybe Tracy might want to add anything or to that. But I think that that might be a request coming forward here in the next few weeks or so.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely something that we should look into and consider. For those who don't recall, the tourism board took action a few months ago, and the individuals that were operating the mill have been doing so pretty much on a volunteer basis with a couple people trying to keep it alive. They worked with the tourism board, and the tourism board assumed that property and the costs that go into that, which I don't know, Steve can agree or disagree. I think they're minimal on average, but that building does need some upgrades. We do have some extra funds available in the hotel motel tax line item, and I think that that would be a fitting use for those funds.
I think is somebody on the phone? Somebody had started talking and quit beeping, but maybe not.
Okay.
Sorry. I thought, no, somebody is there. Yes.
Is it possible to speak in the meeting?
Yeah, can you say what your name is and what you're wanting to speak about?
Yes, my name is Kirby Campbell, and I was just wanting to speak about the topic you're discussing now in the meeting
Okay, go ahead.
about opening and up.
Sure.
Well, I was just observing tonight in the meeting that there's more than 10, 12, I don't know how many's in the room there, and you're distancing. And to me, what's the difference of what's going on in the meeting tonight than what could be going on in a business in town? For somebody sitting 2 hours in a room, why can't a restaurant have that same opportunity?
We don't feel there's any difference. That's just it.
Yeah, it's not us that. Mr. Howlett, do you want to comment?
It's not the city that is in essence being the regulatory or the enforcement agency in regards to this particular issue, or in regards to opening up or closing down. It was the state that closed down. It's the county that remains the one of the enforcement agencies in regards to this. The city did not indicate any emergency orders. We do not have that within our city code at this juncture. Furthermore, if we were to tell you tomorrow, open up, have fun, it'd be the same token as saying, do not open up at all. Okay, we do not have the authority to tell you what you want to do. So it's incumbent upon the businesses to take actions upon themselves. And like the letter that was promulgated and circulated, there are risks. You know, you've probably heard stories about and have looked into that there's other areas. Probably heard some businesses in some other areas that are opening up. And I would have to venture that they've made a risk assessment and made a decision call on their own. And that's just something that the businesses are going to have to do, because there's state licenses that many businesses are privy to. We here at the city, we have a city liquor license. We have a few other licenses, but it's really the state licenses and the state that essentially have been with the cease and desist letters have been essentially been trying to enforce. There have been lawsuits that have been filed that have been going against the governor. We'll see how those develop. But to come to the city at this juncture and to say, to look to us essentially to give you the authority to reopen would be somewhat disingenuous on our part, I believe on the city's part. I don't want to speak, I'm sorry, I do not want to speak for the council as a whole, but from a legal aspect would be disingenuous to essentially give you that authority and clothe you with a sense of purpose to open your business, when in fact it could be the county or the state that comes in to close you down, and in which case you might be somewhat confused as to how the city could tell you to open up when you just got turned around and were closed down. Like I said, this is a developing, in the letter it's a developing issue, and we'll see where this goes, but it's really important. It's also really important to not misinform the public and give them a sense of purpose into reopening when and I don't think that, I think the council here would like to see business, at some point in time, see the businesses thrive and prosper here, but at the same juncture, we don't want to misinform you as well.
I understand. I think a lot of people in the city are just thinking that it's up to the city council, city attorney, the mayor, to do that. I think what I'm understanding from you folks, that it's up to the individual business owner, it's up to the individual citizen in the city. If they want to do something against what the orders are, they have to hire an attorney for themselves, and they have to, foot the bill for all of that themselves. I noticed earlier they were saying in the city that the city really doesn't have the money to pay for legalities, but yet we're talking about tonight in the meeting that we're running low on monies already. And the longer people go without work and businesses open, the city's going to get less and less money. And so, especially if this Wednesday, this legislative goes through and the governor gets his way and he gets 5 more months and probably will offer more after that, how much longer can the city handle?
I believe that's going to be a question for the council.
I think that all of your concerns are valid. I don't think there's one person up here who wouldn't like to give every business in this town the green light to go ahead and open up your doors tomorrow, even if it were at a safe and socially distancing approach. Let's say 50% occupancy, certain numbers, keep people set apart. The reality of it is, though, that the city only has control over certain things, as the city attorney alluded to, and we have nothing to do with a business's license to operate. That is a relationship that they have between them as an entity, a legal entity, and the state of Illinois. And unfortunately, we have a state of Illinois at this time who is choosing to err on the side of caution, even at the expense of business owners' livelihood, and the fact that businesses and communities are going to be economically impacted for many months to come. So we feel for you, and we are trying to do everything in our power to get back to a sense of normal without compromising the entire community as a whole. Because as much as we feel for you guys, we as a council are responsible for the well-being of the entire community as a whole, and that's all of the individuals here. And if we put the city in a position where we start to see serious legal expenses and litigation against the city, now the city as a whole suffers. I think we're fine financially right now. We don't know what the future is going to be like here in the next few months. We know that we're going to lose revenue in motor fuel tax and sales tax. The video gaming is zero because that's been put to a halt altogether. But unfortunately, that's just the position that we're in.
Does anyone have further comments? Kirby, did you have anything else?
No, I guess that's it. I was just, just hoping, like a lot of people, that, if we step out and say, hey, we're going to do something, does that mean we're just on our own? Or, just, I think people in the town are looking like, is the city gonna back us at all? Or are we just on our own entity?
Yeah, and first of all, thanks for calling in and asking us this question, because we've all heard this question. We all have. And I can tell you that the meeting that Alderman Keller gave a very good summary of earlier was the direct result of us understanding what our limited powers are, and even understanding more so that if we're going to be effective and start to get a phased approach of any kind, we have got to start working with our partners at the county, in the health department aspect, and even other counties, because there's success in numbers. And if we can prove that we're meeting the requirements that the governor has set forth in his executive order and his phased approach, that we can build a pretty strong business case to get things back to normal. And that is why we met, to start that process of gathering that information and getting people engaged.
Right. I understand. I was just curious because if this thing goes through Wednesday, to me, for the governor, it's more about giving him 5 months. It's not about the number of cases. It's just more time for him to have more control over the state. And for us having such a low amount of cases, I think it's just going to cripple us even more.
Yeah, I think that that unless there's pushback from communities, there's going to be strength in numbers, and the more that can push, I think that the governor has perhaps overreached his, and I think there's lawsuits that were issued individually down in Southern Illinois that he's overreached on his powers, and unless there's some lawsuits that come, and specific individuals and small businesses aren't really able to do that necessarily. They don't have the funds to bring lawsuits like that necessarily. And so perhaps there's community people, businesses within the city that is just looking for help in that regards. And what can a city do to help bring lawsuit against the governor? Because we're hurting as well, too, as a city. We're going to be hurting real soon. And so not just the businesses, but the city, because we thrive because of businesses. We thrive when people thrive. And right now, our community's not thriving. The state's not thriving. And it's going to be difficult. And so I feel for the businesses. I feel for people. I feel for the churches, that are trying to reach out and to do what's right. But they're looking for, and that's what I'm seeing on Facebook. They're just looking for direction and guidance and help. And I understand, the letter that went out and the way it was written. The way it was written, and so, can we do anything? And I'm looking at our attorney. I mean, and I spoke to you earlier, and it's difficult for a city to bring a lawsuit against.
Well, it just depends. It's something, it was brought to my attention earlier, so I'm looking into it. But there's a question, like, say, if a municipality were to bring a lawsuit, I don't believe any municipalities have at this juncture against the governor. I don't believe any of the counties have. I believe it's just been individuals. Don't quote me on the counties. I'm pretty sure on the municipalities, but don't quote me on the counties. But I don't think they have. And I believe it's just been businesses and individuals, because you have to look as to who the aggrieved party is. If you'll note, the lawsuit that was filed down south, I believe it was a representative of the Illinois General Assembly that filed that. The relief was specifically tendered to him. And within here, let's just say, for example, there's businesses that hold the state license, okay? Let's say, and again, this is something, I need to look into, because again, it was brought to my attention today. But let's say, for example, just hypothetical, and I'm speaking off the cuff here, but we're talking about it at this juncture right now. But if the city were to file suit, will the city's relief be specifically tendered to the city itself? So if the city were to follow suit, it's like, okay, the city employees can go back to work, and city-owned property is now open. Well, guess what? City employees are already working, and city-owned properties, at least now with the parks, are open. So we have no aggrieved nature. There's potential. The way I'm looking into it, the question I have is with the loss of the tax revenue, could that be construed as a loss? But I'm a little worried too at the same juncture that there's a shifting of burden, so to speak, from what it should be, and businesses have done this. They're a collection of businesses, and in no way or fashion is the city, at least the city attorney, is encouraging businesses or whatnot. This is just for information purposes to file suit against the government, because we are a government entity in and of itself. But having said that, there have been lawsuits filed. There have been businesses who have pooled their efforts and come up with some sort of relief. There have been, and essentially shifted the burden from the business itself from operating to the enforcement agency to essentially call their bluff. Okay, this is all again just for information purposes, but to shift the burden to a municipality itself, one, I do not know if that could even take place, because I do not know if we could seek the relief for them on their behalf. It seems something like, say, for example, somebody with a liquor license with the Illinois, Liquor Commission. We have a city liquor license. There's a Illinois liquor license. I do not know if we could file a lawsuit on their behalf against the state of Illinois. Like I said, this is an issue that became aware, that due to the meeting that needs further looking into. But this is essentially, me kind of talking about my thoughts that I've had in regards to it for like the last several hours. It's by no means a legal memo of sorts, but this is again my thoughts and how they're developing, and how what we need to do moving forward. It's just we exist in a limited capacity. We as a city municipality, we don't dictate, businesses. We have our ordinances or whatnot, which are enforced via civil issues. Okay, our powers are limited in what we can or cannot do. Okay, we are not the overlords of the people who live in our municipalities' lives. Okay. They operate their business according to our codes. They operate their businesses in accordance with Illinois state laws and apparently Illinois executive orders from the governor. Okay, and if it's the Illinois, and you have to look to who's the aggrieved party and who's the one doing it. And the aggrieved party is most notably the businesses themselves who are closed down, and the person and the entity doing it is the state of Illinois. So that's where I'm kind of coming on that issue at this juncture. I will, of course, do more research on it at this juncture. But if I had to venture a guess, I'm guessing some other municipalities are as well. I'm going to guess there's businesses, constituents, and municipalities all around the state where these questions are being posed. I'm guessing these questions are being posed at the county level as well. And you're starting to hear stories of businesses reopening in some areas. It'll be interesting to see how those develop as well, to see if they just remain in operation or if there's closures that come down the pipeline. It'll be interesting to see how the lawsuit that was filed down south, how that pans out. Now, when I say interesting, that is to say I'm not trying to diminish the very real problems our businesses are having here, because something might be of interest to me, but they might be actually really suffering here, and they want some solutions, some real answers. I am cognizant of that. So I will keep the council apprised. But again, that's essentially the breakdown I have. This obviously requires more research.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just to close out this conversation, first of all, thank you again, Mr. Campbell, for calling in, and we encourage all of our residents to let us know how you're thinking, feeling, and just to reiterate, we are taking a measured approach. I don't feel we're sitting on our hands and doing nothing. We're investigating all of our options. Again, we're taking a measured approach, but we're not done with our response or our actions as well. But thank you again, Mr. Campbell, for calling in.
I appreciate what you're doing. I just wanted to speak up and, I just leave it this way. Something I've always taught and tried to express to people is I believe that we're supposed to bear you one another's burdens. And so I, for one, want to stand up and not sit back any longer. And I hope and pray that that's what other people will decide to do. But thank you, folks, for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Are there other comments or announcements? Mr. Keller?
I'll do my normal census update and followed by the city administrator's Comcast update, the dynamic duo that we've become. But currently, we are now at nationally a 59.6% response rate. Illinois is 64.6. We still rank number 9th in the response rate. Logan County is 65%, so we still remain above the national average. So keep the census forms coming in. Thank you.
State of Illinois should be 100%. That's nobody can do anything else. Just saying. Any other announcements or comments? No Comcast at all? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Keller made the motion. Mr. Parrott seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 9:27 p.m. Thank you.